All right, we've wrapped up talking about applications of the derivative when we finished up talking about optimization in our last video. So we're going to move forward into chapter 5, where we introduce some of sort of a big phase shift in terms of where things go in the calculus course. So we've spent several chapters now talking about derivatives. We're kind of changing gears and looking at something different. We start by discussing something we call an antiderivative for a function. And that word may sound a little bit daunting, but it's actually part of a much bigger pattern that you've seen throughout your entire mathematical background. Every time you've been taught a math operation, it feels like the very next thing we tell you how to do is to undo that operation. You add, you subtract, then you multiply, then you divide. Exponents, roots, exponentials, logarithms, this keeps going. The derivative is a math operation. It sort of stands to reason that we might want to have some way to work backwards so we get back where we started from whatever that we were just dealing with when we took the derivative in the first place. So that's what we're talking about when we deal with an antiderivative. So we have a function. Normally I would use f of x here, but for reasons that will become apparent in a moment, I want g of x in this instance. So my antiderivative is going to be a new function, capital G of x. This is the real motivation for why I'm using G instead of F, because when I'm in a hurry writing on a board, little f, big F kind of end up looking alike if I'm rushing. So we need some other function, and its derivative, big G, needs to drop us back at our target point. We want big G prime of x to equal little g of x. Make sense? Awesome. So let's take a look at an example. So fall back on one of our old buddies, the quadratic function. If g of x equals x squared, if we were trying to determine a function whose derivative is x squared, we might sort of try to reverse engineer the power rule that we've been using to get derivatives of stuff like this all semester long. So the power rule says we would have to pull an exponent out front of this guy and then subtract 1. So we want something that when we subtract 1 from our exponent, we end up back at x squared. So let's follow that thread. We need something that when we subtract 1, it gives us 2. Hopefully, 3 makes sense there as a response. The catch is, now you may already be thinking, well, wait, when I execute the power rule, this 3 hops out front, and I'd have 3x squared. That's not what we're wanting. We can, in fact, however, introduce something in front of here to take care of that, and you may already be ahead of the game on that front. What if I wrote a 1/3 right there? Now, when I execute the power rule to differentiate this thing, the 3 hops out front, the 1/3 and the 3 crash into each other like the Monday Night Football helmets used to, and they're gone. We have a coefficient of 1. Power rule says 3 minus 1 is our new exponent. That's 2. We get x squared. So 1/3 x cubed. That's one possible antiderivative of the quadratic function that we started with, little g of x. The question that might end up popping up at this point is, are there any other functions that could possibly do this job? That's something mathematicians are often really worried about. We found one solution. Is it the only solution? So it'll sometimes come up as a question of existence and uniqueness. Bit of bad news, it turns out there are other functions that will work as an antiderivative. We're going to take a look at one in just a sec here. Let me come up with some forward space. So on the other hand, I'll call it G2 of x. If you wanted to label it some other thing, you could. So this is a little technical, so pay close attention. Watching? That does it. So if we tried to take a derivative of this new guy, well, we already know what happens to the 1/3 x cubed. Pop out front, exponent comes down, x squared there. Since this plus 1 I slapped on the end as a constant, all constants have a derivative of 0, so he just falls away. So bad news, this isn't the only possible antiderivative. I just gave you a second one. we could all come up with another antiderivative simply by picking our favorite number and slapping it in back of this 1/3 x cubed. As a matter of fact, that's something I'm going to ask you to do in the assignment later on. The good news, so I said this is kind of bad news, the good news on the other hand is there aren't really any other options available. As it turns out, once you have one antiderivative, this is really the only move that's available, slapping some constant on the end of it. So in general, so if we have a little g of x and a big G of x, any other antiderivative this is a long word to have to write down. So any other antiderivative is going to look like the first one we found plus some constant c. We'll generally refer to this as a constant of integration. Why we're using that word again will become apparent in just a moment. But I'll sometimes just refer to this as an arbitrary constant. So we have whatever our first big G of x is plus c. We'll often denote this like so. So the rationale here is it's kind of a pain to have this lowercase, uppercase thing going on as far as referencing antiderivatives. I've already told you that it makes it hard for me to use the letter f to represent a function. And at the same time, what happens if the function you're working with is already represented by a capital letter? Do you over-capitalize? Well, yeah, I don't know what the protocol would be for that. So anyway, so instead of constantly using this capital letter thing to talk about antiderivatives, the notation we use is as follows. So I've got my little g, that's my target function here. I have this thing that looks kind of like an S that somebody's grabbed at the top and the bottom and stretched out. And then we have this little piece of notation in the back here. That's a dx. That's something we call a differential. You don't need to worry about the technicalities of what that means for now. Just get in the habit of writing this when you're computing one of these guys, or when you're writing the notation around one of them. So I'm generally, you might call that a general antiderivative for g of x. We'll often also refer to it as an indefinite integral of g of x. So that's, again, part of why the big C ends up becoming a constant of integration, because we're referring to this thing as an indefinite integral of the function that we started with. Okay? So now we've looked at one example. We had the quadratic function, and we've sort of talked about how the power rule could be used sort of in reverse to generate antiderivatives of other power functions. As it turns out, we actually already have a lot of antiderivative formulas. Essentially, we could take any derivative formula that we've had and sort of work backwards to obtain the corresponding antiderivative formula. So that brings us to a very somber moment in the course. So for the past month and more, we've had what we referred to as our bestest friend reference sheet. I have my copy sitting right here. So he's gotten us through a lot of tough times so far. We had specific derivative formulas on him. We had more broad principles, things like the chain rule and the product rule, things like that sketched there, so we didn't have to commit them to memory. So he's gotten us through a lot of tough times so far. So what I'd like for us to do at this point is take a moment, thank him for all of the hard work he's done for us, because he's getting an upgrade. So at this stage, imagine a montage of Iron Man type stuff where servos are coming down and fusing new bits onto the bestest friend reference sheet. And when the transformation is complete, we have this guy. So instead of derivative rules, I'm failing. There we go. We have derivative and integral rules. So one side has all of the derivative stuff that we've talked about before. The back side now has stuff for antiderivatives. And you see a bunch of handy antiderivative formulas sitting right there at the bottom. Don't panic about pausing the video when copying all of that down. In Moodle, you're going to see a PDF of this precise document. So just like the previous bestest friend sheet, this new guy, I usually call it the bestest friend Mark II, because I like the Iron Man reference, is something I'm taking for granted you're going to have by your side when you're working on stuff going forward. So before you take a look at that next video, go ahead and make sure you've got it open, a printout, the PDF sitting alongside the video, either one's fine. So we're going to take a look at using those rules on our new bestest friend sheet to tackle some other examples in just a moment. Maybe it's just a moment. I don't know how quickly you're going to get to that next video.